Executive Chamber number 6, Transportation Triangle, Composite, take 1.
Looking down from above, the rush hour traffic is an endless crawling stream of cars and trucks, tangling and untangling on weekday mornings and afternoons. This is the bird's eye view of fearless Fred Feldman.
Okay, this looks like a very bad morning for most New York motorists, and here is the worst of it. Long Island Expressway traffic is bumper to bumper, extremely heavy and slow, from East Flushing right into the Metropolitan Avenue exit of the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway. This is due to one truck stalled there in the right-hand lane, and I would definitely urge alternate routing unless you have survival kits with you and an awful lot of coffee. Down in Brooklyn, Battery Tunnel traffic is extremely heavy inbound from the Gowanus Parkway. Bumper-to-bumper traffic also over the Brooklyn Bridge. The upper deck of the Manhattan Bridge is the best alternate at this time.
Welcome. In the executive chamber, which is the governor's office in Albany, New York's official coat of arms is never far from view. You see it on wall plaques, on letterheads, and on the state flag. If you look closely at our state emblem, you can see the figure of liberty and the figure of justice, ideals to which our country was dedicated, and the state motto, Excelsior, which means ever upward. And right in the middle, the practical way that our forefathers believed liberty, justice, and growth would be realized. A scene of a square-rigged ship and a Hudson River sloop carrying their passengers and cargo throughout the state. They were right in their choice of symbols. Transportation has proven a vital factor in the growth and prosperity of New York. True, we started with an unusually deep harbor and a splendid river, but it took the foresight of a Governor DeWitt Clinton to ignore the joking about his big ditch and push through with the Erie Canal that made New York a gateway to the West. It took great native enterprise by railroad men to make every corner of the state accessible by the end of the last century. Today, the means of transportation are obviously changing, but the overall goal of rapid and safe movement of people and goods is no less a prime secret of success for our state. Thus, the news that has been building up of crisis on commuter trains and continued traffic jams on our highways is not good news at all. For the next few minutes, let's take a look at the transportation tangle and consider some causes and some cures.
In modern times, with the coming of spring, along with the voice of the turtle, the voice of the bulldozer is heard in the land. Since interstate commerce is the constitutional responsibility of the federal government, federal monies have been made available to subsidize the building of airports, as well as the airlines that use them, to help pay for interstate highways on a 90% federal and 10% state basis, and to help pay for major state roads on a 50-50 basis. Taking full advantage of federal subsidies, from 1959 to 1964, we built or rebuilt 8,000 miles of modern, safe highways in New York State. Occasionally, while rushing along the new roads, some New Yorkers may have noticed a melancholy sight. Half a century ago, the motor car had done in the horse. Now it was doing in the iron horse. Now there are no more passenger trains to stop, look, and listen for on many New York railroads. Coming to office in 1959, I was already deeply concerned about this trend. Even the newest and widest of highways would never be able to keep up with the rapidly increasing number of passenger cars and trucks carrying people and freight that used to move by rail. Immediately, we enacted tax relief to help save the railroads and began a program to help commuter lines acquire new equipment on a long-term lease financed by the state. In 1961, legislation was passed to allow communities to contribute to the cost of operating and maintaining passenger stations. New York City, Westchester, and Nassau counties are participating in this program. But the odds against the commuter railroads are still too great.
The Jamaica station of the Long Island Railroad is the busiest passenger station, the busiest passenger railroad in the country. But from mid-morning until late afternoon, there is little or nothing going on. Downstairs in the trainman's room, any number of men will be reading or playing cards if they happen to stay on the premises in the long intervals between their train runs. Down the tracks in Yard D, there are up to 300 of our passenger cars sitting idle between the periods of the commuter rush. Just beyond the tracks, you can see the Van Wyck Expressway, carrying midday traffic into Manhattan. Passengers who used to travel on the Long Island Railroad and whose loss has emphasized the terribly inefficient nature of the commuter railroad business. This afternoon on their way home and tomorrow morning on their way to work, 75,000 commuters will pass through the Jamaica station. In all, the Long Island Railroad carries over 250,000 passengers a day. Every morning and evening, every piece of our rolling stock and every available trainman is working. And just at those peak periods, when the demand upon us is greatest, our prices are the lowest, for it is traditional that commuter tickets should be at a cut rate. These are hard conditions for a business. To operate at a peak level for 2 short periods a day, and then do little or nothing for many hours in between. It's an inefficient way to use labor. It's an inefficient way to use equipment. But these are the conditions with which a commuter railroad must live, or try to live.
Looking down from the airlines that now fly from New York to Boston at economy fares, you can see the New England Thruway and the Connecticut Turnpike standing like a Chinese wall between the New Haven Railroad and the industries and communities it has long served. The superhighways, along with a history of bad management, have dealt critical blows to the New Haven. The railroad has been in bankruptcy. Early this year, the court-appointed trustees filed a formal application to severely curtail commuter service and to eliminate it completely for stations between Larchmont and New York.
This is the Mayor's Committee to Save the New Haven Railroad. Village Attorney Quinn of North Pelham, Mayor Trotter of North Pelham, Mayor Messina of Portchester, Acting Mayor Regetta of Mount Vernon, Supervisor Snodgrass of Rye, Supervisor Priscillipo, Mayor Fairfax of Pelham, Mayor Ryan of Larchmont, Supervisor O'Brien of New Rochelle, and Mayor Smith of Mamaroneck. If commuter service were discontinued on the New Haven Railroad, it would have a catastrophic economic effect on our communities. Realty values would plummet downward, and we feel that as a result, services would have to be cut back in education and other municipal services. It's estimated that 80 new traffic lanes would have to be built to New York City to handle the additional traffic necessitated by any discontinuance of commuter service. This would mean millions and millions of dollars new highway construction. When the traffic reached New York, there would be no place for the traffic to be located. From Portchester to New York City, 30,000 commuters would be vitally affected by the discontinuance of commuter service.
The trouble on the trains is much more than an industry being outdated by progress. It is more than the inherent high cost of commuter service, and more than occasional bad management. The railroads that we need for mass transportation are reeling from competition subsidized by federally aided highways, waterways, airlines, and airports. What is needed for the whole country, not only New York, is a federal Department of Transportation that could take over all the competing functions of the various federal agencies now concerned with air, water, rail, pipeline, and highway transportation. A Department of Transportation in Washington would develop and administer a coordinated overall national transportation policy. Such a national policy would eliminate the ill effects of Washington's piecemeal approach to rail mergers and unbalanced approach to financial aid for one form of transportation at the expense of another. I have long argued for the creation of a federal Department of Transportation and a national transportation policy. I will continue to argue for it. But wheels in Washington move slowly. We can afford to wait no longer, lest the wheels of our commuter trains stop turning completely. Recently, in cooperation with Governor Dempsey of Connecticut, we made these proposals to cope with the immediate problems of the New Haven Railroad. First, the purchase of 80 modern commuter cars and the repair of 50 older cars, which would be leased to the railroad for $1 a year. Now, to finance this, New York State has already appropriated $5 million, so has the legislature of Connecticut. Together, we will apply to the proper federal agency for the matching $10 million. In the meantime, we're developing an emergency plan to tide over the New Haven commuter service until the new cars are available. Second, the Westchester County Board of Supervisors have already voted $400,000 a year toward the maintenance and operating cost of passenger stations. The Connecticut Transportation Authority has indicated its willingness to make similar payments. Third, for the long-term solution, Governor Dempsey and I are exploring an arrangement by which the commuter service of the New Haven Railroad might be operated under contract by the New York Central Railroad, thereby affecting greater economies and giving the New Haven efficient management. Now turning to the Long Island Railroad, the route of the dashing commuter. The Long Island may also go into bankruptcy if the state doesn't act soon. Here are the major proposals just released by my special committee that has been studying the Long Island Railroad situation. First, that New York State purchase the Long Island Railroad from its sole owner, the Pennsylvania Railroad, if a reasonable price can be obtained. Secondly, that a Metropolitan Commuter Transportation Authority be created by the legislature as soon as possible to assume responsibility for the operation of the railroad. Our hope would be that to contract with an experienced private management to run the railroad. 3, a $200 million program for modernization of the railroad would be undertaken by the authority financed through the sale of authority bonds, not through general taxes. Now, beside acting to continue and improve commuter train and bus service, our long-range goals are to bring about a national transportation policy and to utilize the most advanced planning techniques to avoid future breakdowns in our transportation system.
In between Hartford and Trenton and Montauk Point and Orange County, there are 18 million people living. That's nearly 1/10 of all the people in the country. And that means 1/10 of all the cars and trucks, 1/10 of all the homes and businesses. 1/10 of the nation right here in this metropolitan area is getting itself tangled as it tries to move from place to place with reasonable cost and convenience. One of our approaches to the problem involves experimentation, trying to lessen the traffic on one route in a manner that could be applied to other routes. In the Kew Garden station of the Long Island Railroad, we have an automatic ticket device under trial. It works something like a charger plate and will streamline ticket collection and thus speed service, and is being conducted in cooperation with the unions on the railroad. In the New York Harbor, which is crisscrossed by tugboats, lighterage barges from railroad terminals to docksides, we've worked out a plan that will eliminate 5 separate terminals by consolidating their operation into one terminal, and thereby save the railroads serving New York Harbor $9 million a year. Looking ahead to the future, we know that there will be 30 million people living in this same area where 18 million people are living today. In order that gigantic traffic jams and commuter railroad breakdowns do not occur, we have undertaken to develop an accurate prediction of where people will be living a quarter of a century from now and where they will be traveling to. The first step of research was photographing from the air every square mile, every acre, every block of land in the tri-state area, and analyzing how the land is being used now. We also asked the communities what their plans were for the future use of their land. The second step was to measure travel patterns as they exist now. We have analyzed the private automobile travel in great detail, the rail and subway routes, and the bus lines. By projecting from our surveys, we can actually predict just how many millions of trips a day will be made in the future. Our ultimate goal is not to build new routes of transportation first and then let communities spring up around them, as they always have done in the past, but to develop a concept of just where the centers of population will be and what the patterns of transportation will be between them, and then to plan and to build the proper means and devices of transportation to sustain a community of 30 million people.
Throughout the state, there are problems of moving people and goods. There is bad traffic on Route 104 through Rochester and Irondequoit, on Route 7 through Troy, on Buffalo Avenue in Niagara Falls, on Route 9 through Loudonville and Albany. This spring, transportation studies in Utica, Rome, Poughkeepsie, Beacon, Hudson, and the Capital District are being conducted by our State Department of Public Works. Intensive surveys have already been completed with respect to Rochester, Binghamton, and the Niagara frontier.
Once we have an accurate measurement of existing land use and of travel today, we begin to lay out networks of roads and bus lines which will adequately serve future travel demands in a given area. The object of our labor in planning is to design a great number of travel corridors, we call them, which knit an entire urban area together. And then from all these possible routes, we test how different combinations would work out. Let's say we want to test a certain combination of building new roads and improving existing roads in the Buffalo-Niagara area. The maps which our planners have worked on are taken into our coding room here, where locations and characteristics of each proposed change are translated into numbers. In our key punch room, the mathematical descriptions of the particular transportation system we want to test are put onto punch cards, each card containing information about the measurements and direction of a new road or bus line. Can I have the deck now, please? Thank you. This pack of cards contains Plan N29 for the Niagara frontier, a plan which calls for the building of 225 miles of new expressways and the improving of certain existing major streets. Is this the best combination of routes to move the people and the commerce of the Niagara frontier in 1985? Is this the best combination in view of the 50% expansion of population and the 80% expansion of motor vehicles that we know will take place in Buffalo and the Niagara Falls during the next 20 years? This is how we find out. The question is so fantastically complex that none of our own computers can answer it. We transfer the information from the punched cards onto a reel of magnetic tape, and then physically send this tape down to New York City, where it is put on a giant computer twice the size of anything we have here and many times more powerful. The findings of that computer are sent back to us on another reel of tape, which feeds into this device, a machine that actually draws a map of roads to come. The wider a road drawn by the map machine, the more traffic it will have to carry. By examining the output of the machine, we can see the bottlenecks of 1985, but also by testing plan after plan, we can see just what combination of road building, road improvements, and changes in other means of transportation will be best for an area 20 years from now. Best not only in terms of letting people and goods move about within the area rapidly, but also best from the point of view of what it costs, how safe it is, and the desirable patterns of land development in the area.
Even in the age of the map machine, final decisions about construction will remain, as they always have been and always should be, a give-and-take proposition between the road builders and the people who are personally affected by the route. Everybody wants new roads, but nobody wants their home displaced, their business bypassed, their residential neighborhood or natural resources disturbed by a highway.
If anybody has ever ridden over old Route 17 in the last few years between Livingston Manor and Roscoe, they will know that it's one of the worst pieces of highway in the state. The edges are broken off, and there's been numerous accidents. Now they've got a new route along the river bottom, and also the construction work will raise a lot of sediment and dirt to run in the streams. It will hurt the fishing, and the fishermen want this protected at all costs. The feeling is so strong that they have signatures, some 17,000 signatures from all over the world of fishermen who have fished these streams, advocating a route along the side of the hill. There's been a bad time around here. The feelings have been very high. Even good friends were no longer speaking, especially in Roscoe, where the road would have to be raised because it's going right through the center of town. Some of the people who wanted to sell their properties where the road is, they were for it, but a lot of the rest of the town didn't relish looking at a high embankment outside the doors.
The Beaverkill and the Willow-Emock are two of the best trout streams in the world and major attractions for Sullivan and Delaware counties. The valley bottom course of the new Route 17 expressway is an old one, often following the abandoned roadbed of the New York, Ontario, and Western. And fishing survived the railroad. The hillside route would have been prohibitively expensive and unsafe due to slides and erosion in the area. The construction is especially designed to protect conditions favorable for the fish. Perhaps when the new road is done, the Conservation Department has restocked and improved the streams, the sportsmen may forgive and forget, if not understand.
over a period of time, now that the road is becoming an accomplished fact, some of the tempers have calmed a little bit and some of the friends have made up, but some will probably for many, many years carry a grudge and have a little ill feeling against their former friends. We know that every mile that is built of four-lane highway is bringing population and shorter traveling time. It'll bring the fishermen up here faster, actually. In time, we probably will gain from the road being in, because people can come here and enjoy our natural resources, our woods and our streams and our camping, which we rely upon for our economy.
New roads mean change. In our history, new roads have usually meant change for the better.
Corning Glassworks is vitally interested in the completion of the new Route 17 from New York City to the western border of the state, not only to better serve Corning, but to also the entire southern tier, including such towns as Binghamton, Elmira, Painted Post, Olean, Salamanca, Jamestown, and Dunkirk. We, for instance, ship over 100 truckloads of material a day. Some of our employees commute as much as 40 miles from other areas to work in the Corning area. In the summer months, tourism is a very important and vital factor. The improved highway, when complete, will help all of the business in the area move goods in and out faster and safer, but also permit expansion of the present industry and attract new business. We have already expanded, and in the near future, the Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company will open one of the largest food processing centers in the country. In addition, new motels are opening, and I don't think there's any doubt that a modern expressway is a vital factor to the growth of the southern tier area.
Transportation, I'm afraid, is something most of us take for granted until something goes wrong with it. In the executive chamber, we cannot take it for granted. The new roads must be built. Commuter trains and buses must run where needed, no matter what the arguments or obstacles. The lesson of our state's history is too clear. Transportation is the means to grow ever upward.